Once you know who you are and what your values are, and you arrange your life around that, then you're living a life that is aligned with your values and you're more prepared to live it fully as well.
It's such an incredible journey, and that you gave yourself that opportunity to follow that dream and actually go to each country to learn that dance. I haven't heard anyone doing something like that. Hi, and welcome to Beyonder the podcast. I'm your host, V. And in Beyonder the podcast, we go beyond borders, not just country borders, but also inner limitations. And with my guests, I talk about inner and outer journeys. And I'm very excited about the conversation I'm going to have with today's guest. She's a dear friend of mine, and we actually met first on Instagram. I read her book, which is all about her journey of quitting her job and traveling and dancing around the world. And if you know me, you know travel and dancing are two of my biggest passions. So we connected and we, have those shared interests. And then actually I found out that she was living in Lisbon, where I often would visit my family. So we met in person and then we became friends right away. And since then, the rest is history. So we have been, connected for about 5 years, I think now. And I'm very excited to talk to her today about this journey, about what she does. She is not only an author, she wrote this incredible book, Finding Rhythm, but she's also a speaker and a happiness expert. So we're going to dive into some very interesting topics, not just about traveling and dancing around the world, but also how you can have the courage to live your life authentically and on your own terms. So let's just dive in. Welcome to the podcast, Alienor. I'm so grateful that you're here with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so glad that Instagram brought us together and dance and travel brought us together.
Yeah. And so the first question I always ask my guests is, how do you live your life beyond the ordinary?
I live my life beyond the ordinary by having the courage to live it fully and authentically. I'll unpack in two parts. By fully, I feel that many people are not taking the opportunity of life. We let life carry us through the mundane, through the routines, through the obligations. One day rolls into another, one weekend rolls into another, when actually it's just about setting the intention to live fully. And by this, I don't mean bungee jumping or swimming with sharks or anything crazy like that, but by seizing every opportunity to live, whether it's feeling this sense of aliveness from listening to the waves, watching a sunset, contemplating a flower, all these moments where we're present, that's living fully. Dancing, of course, is for me an activity that makes me feel like I'm living fully, but there are so many other ways to do that. And I feel like many of us, and I include myself because we've all overcome a lot of limitations and our fears hold us back from doing the things we wish we'd do. So many people say, oh, one day I'll do this. I think in previous generations, it was always retirement. Oh, when I'm retired, I'll do this and that. And we're actually seeing in previous generations reaching retirement that are incredibly disappointed and don't know how to live beyond work.
Mm-hmm.
When actually life was always there for you to live fully and it doesn't have a cost. It just requires an intention and an effort. So that's the fully part. Some people think, oh, one day I'll learn this language. One day I'll take up classes and whatever. But then do they actually do it? I think a lot of people feel being in the comfort zone is much safer when actually we are the boss of our lives in the end. It's us that decides. And then in terms of authentically, I mean, it's completely related. I think many of us, and again, I put myself because that used to be me, follow the expectations of society, of our parents, of different structures, rather than what we really want to do. And there's that famous book, The Regrets of the Dying by Bronnie Ware, that the number one regret of the dying is, I wish I'd lived a life that was more true to me. So the search for truth is, well, what is true to you? What is really you? Who are you? And then we get into a whole identity crisis or identity strength, because for me, identity is the starting piece of the puzzle in happiness and in living a happy life. Because once you know who you are and what your values are, and you arrange your life around that, then you're living a life that is aligned with your values, and you're more prepared to live it fully as well.
Yeah, beautiful. And how did that journey start for you? Because you just mentioned, like, I was like that as well, not living a life that felt aligned. Where was that turning point for you that you felt like, okay, something needs to change because this is not fulfilling. I don't feel happy, because you were actually researching happiness, right? But
Yeah,
not maybe
absolutely.
feeling happy yourself. How was that journey? What changed?
Well, it was exactly that. I was working at UNESCO in Bangkok. I was researching happiness and the reform of education systems in response to, very sadly, the huge pressure that education systems put on teenagers, especially, leading to a huge amount of mental health problems, even suicide. And so we thought, well, education can't be a source of unhappiness. So then, in the process of reforming systems to be happier and healthier, I had to study the science of happiness. And what was really interesting is in any course, you kind of have to apply it on yourself. And at the beginning, I was like, I don't want to write a gratitude letter. I just want to give me the science, give me the stuff so that I can reform policy, and I was living a dream life, by the way. I was living in Bangkok. I had great friends, great apartment, fantastic dream job researching happiness at the UN. I mean, you couldn't really ask for more. Loads of travel every month. I could go on a long weekend somewhere in Southeast Asia. And there I was, being annoyed that I had to actually practice the very things I was preaching. But here's what's interesting. Once I started doing it, and, life has an interesting way of throwing challenges at you in the very right moment. I lost 3 people that I loved in the space of 6 months in very different ways. And so this led to a period of intense sadness and grief. And I would have done anything not to feel sad. It was a state of suffering where I would have done anything to not feel that suffering. And at the same time, I'm having to learn how to apply these happiness science principles and practices onto myself. And that's when I realized that something was out of alignment. I wanted to promote happiness at a systemic level, and I couldn't even do it with myself. And so I thought I couldn't continue researching happiness, speaking about happiness, publishing about happiness without actually being an example of that myself. And so I started to think, well, what could I do that would remove the suffering? That was the first thing. What could I do that would take away the sadness? And I realized that I didn't have an answer. And that shocked me, because I thought, I've always been a very joyful person that makes the most out of life. It's not like I went from being drastically from a miserable person to happy overnight. No, I went through an intense phase of sadness as a joyful, happy person. And then I thought, well, something needs to change. And I really just had to listen to my heart rather than my head. And I just imagined myself being liberated from my desk, out in the street, in the fresh air, probably speaking Spanish. And it would just all came to my mind. And I thought, I would love to just quit my job and go and dance somewhere. And I was with a friend, and she said, well, where would you go? And I said, well, just a sabbatical of 1 month. I mean, I'm not giving up this career. No way. Just 1 month, maybe Argentina for tango. And then, of course, I started thinking of all the different dances I like. And then I thought, well, if I'm going that far, then there's also Rio Carnival. But then if I'm going to Latin America, I have to learn salsa, but there are 5 styles of salsa. So maybe I learn all of them. And then there's also bachata. And then it just grew and grew and grew. And I thought, well, if I wanted to learn all of them, I would have to quit, because I would never get a sabbatical that long. And my friend was like, well, you can. And I was like, can I? And that's where I made the decision in my mind. And what was interesting is the suffering left me the moment I made the decision, not the moment I got on the plane. So actually, it goes to show that often these prisons are really in our mind, that once we make a decision to take control over our lives again, to make decisions for our lives, then actually we have agency. We have far more agency than we think we do, and we can completely alter our mood. And so it took probably 8 months between the time I made the decision and I got on that plane. And I had the best last 8 months in Bangkok because I was gearing up to a big journey.
Yeah, I love that story. And I love what you said, that it's really about the decision and not actually stepping on the plane, right? And to make that choice for yourself, and that can actually shift so much, as you said, in your mood, in your whole vision of life. And I'm curious what happened after then, the moment you quit your job after those 8 months and actually stepped on the plane. Was there a moment that you felt like, oh my God, what am I doing? Is this a mistake? Or did you really feel like, no, this feels like the right decision, no doubts at all? Like, what was that process like for you?
I didn't have any doubt. The only doubts I had were during that 8-month period where I still had an exit route. If I wanted to take the exit, I could. But once I was on that plane, the decision was done. And I think, fortunately, once I make a decision, I go with it and I don't look back. And I also had a very big travel itinerary with a lot of adventures waiting for me, places that I had dreamed of that I'd never seen in my life. So I was also investing all my life savings into this, and I wasn't going to turn back. This was the adventure of a lifetime.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful. And if you would summarize it, how did that change your life from literally, being in a job for years and then suddenly having this freedom and dancing, learning different dances, being in different countries? How was the journey for you? Do you feel like it really changed you, or?
There's so many things. First of all, I think that this journey changed my definition of success. Even though I've never really lived a conventional life, I think that I was still swayed by, well, I've got my, successful UN career. Well, the logical thing is that I keep climbing and I get, a nice permanent contract. And I just keep getting promoted and then what, right? I think this journey taught me that in the end, the greatest success that you can have is inside. It's not in external things. It's not in your job title, how much money you make, how many things you own, or the check boxes that society put for you, mortgage, marriage, children. There's nothing wrong with those things, by the way. But there's a big difference between following it because that's what you have to do and intentionally choosing to do those things. And so my definition of success was having time to feel completely alive, to have time to live fully, to be able to be outside, to connect with other people. And I think the 3 lessons that I summarize in my TEDx talk about this journey are, well, 1, human connection is the most valuable thing that we have. And that TEDx was almost 4 years ago. Every happiness study that comes out, everything that we're seeing now is all about how human connection is what will save us in a world of AI and what's real, what's fake, human connection is the most precious resource that we have. Second, life isn't really fully lived if you're not really expressing an authentic version of yourself. So I think those are kind of 2 big lessons that come out from the journey, from the book. And this human connection element is especially important because when you're dancing with people from completely different backgrounds to yourself, there's something so human about it because people are transmitting their energy to you. Like, you share eye contact, you hold people's hands, and you're there for 3 minutes without looking at your phone. It's a form of presence and care as well. And you're trusting someone else for a whole song. It's a very big deal and it's very special. And I really think that dance will save the world. This is actually the subject of my next book. That's the unofficial title, but I really do think dancing will save the world, and not being a professional dancer, just going and dancing with people.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more because I know how transformational dancing has been for me in my life as well. I feel like what you said, it's this human connection that we're all looking for. And with dancing, you have this extra type of connection that goes beyond words, right? There's like body language, you look into each other's eyes and you have this connection for a moment with a complete stranger, and all you do is share this song together, and it's so special. And as you said, you don't have to be a professional dancer to enjoy that. And yeah, I can't wait to read your next book when it comes out. What do you
Yeah.
feel like looking back on this journey of, you traveled for 8 months, danced everywhere? How did that lead to your next chapter in your life? Did you feel like after those 8 months, okay, now this is over, this was fun, now I have to go back to a job again? Or did it change you so much that you felt like, no, that's not even an option anymore? How did that part go for you after you had this incredible journey of dancing everywhere?
So, very good question, because my original goal was, oh, I'm just taking a year off. And then, of course, I'm going back to my prestigious UN career. Why would I ever give that up? And towards the end of my journey, I started taking up consulting work, meaning this was before remote work was even a thing. It was former colleagues who needed help on things that I could do from anywhere. And I started to realize that most of my skills, most of what I'm really good at, did not require me sitting in an office all day at all. I'm a researcher, I'm a writer, I analyze, a policy analyst. Like I don't need to sit in an office to do those things. And at the same time, I was looking to come back. And I think that, again, the universe always conspires for things to work or not work, depending on what you need. And I started to realize the path of going back to a full-time position wasn't working out, at least not how I thought it would. And I thought, but is it really what I want? Because I've changed too much. I really, really love my freedom. And actually, I'm able to take on these consulting contracts. And so I started to grow that and was able to sustain myself through consulting contracts with not just my old team, but then my old colleagues moved to other teams and other offices. And then I worked with different types of clients. And it actually created an environment where I could actually help a lot more people. Rather than belonging to just one team, I could expand and help more people. And it allowed me to also see, well, how can I best support the integration of happiness in systems? So not just in education, but also in entrepreneurship or resilience or in healthcare or so many different aspects of society, because that is my mission after all, is I would love to imagine a world where everyone is really enjoying their life and is feeling fulfilled and is feeling like they can flourish and that they can reach their full potential. And at a systemic level, can you imagine how much that would reduce costs for the health system? How much more productive the economy would be, what better outcomes young people would have at school. I mean, for me, it's in a way, without getting too technical, by changing the way that I live my life and by choosing to live my life in that way, I'm embodying what I want for the world. And it felt much more aligned.
And how do you integrate that in your daily life? Because of course, going on this big trip is one thing, and that's like a journey of a lifetime. But then what are practices you have in your daily life that really feel like help you to live your life in an authentic way, as you said, aligned with your values, that you really feel like you can feel that true happiness on a daily basis? And of course, things happen. Life is lifing, we have like ups and downs. But as you said, you can be a joyful, happy person and still go through moments of sadness.
Of course.
Do you have any daily practices now that really help you to get more into that state of happiness?
Absolutely. And there's one thing I want to be clear about. You don't need to quit your job and travel around the world to find your happiness. Sure, when you travel, it always helps you after a moment of great difficulty, or to get out of a funk, or when you feel that you're stagnant. Of course, it helps a lot. But in the daily living of life, there are so many little things that you can incorporate and that I have maintained, or that I like to think of it almost as a suitcase that I can take with me anywhere. And I'll always do those things. And for instance, it's as simple as every morning I have lemon water, but I'll do that wherever I am as much as I possibly can if I have access to lemons, of course.
Yeah.
And then I'll have that sitting by the window and I'll take a moment of silence. And then that will always be a moment with myself wherever I am in the world. Always trying as much as possible to go for walks. I definitely feel the absence when lately, as I was telling you, I wasn't able to go for walks, and I really feel when it's not there. And as much as possible, no podcast, no calls, just complete silence, or at least I try and walk one direction in silence and one back, and then I catch up on voice notes and calls. And I do really enjoy listening to podcasts while I'm walking, especially by the water. And I mean, walking rewires your brain. It calms anxiety. It's just such a great thing to have in your routine. Another is to really, it can be on a walk or any other activity, is to just really look out for glimmers all the time. So for me, it could be the shape of a cloud. It could be if a bird came to rest near me. Or it could be a flower that I saw. It could be a child laughing, or it could be an elderly couple holding hands, or, I'm constantly scanning for this positive input. And we are designed to scan for negative inputs. Negativity bias is part of our, we were meant to be in caves, escaping from a mammoth and looking for danger all the time. Now, at least from my own experience, I don't have the science to back it up like from the top of my head. But what I can say is when you make it a daily practice to intentionally scan for positive things, it does become a habit. And you can change that. And the negativity bias is always there. You always have to keep kind of going back to it, and definitely finding activities to be in my body. So for me, that's dance. And the beauty is wherever you are in the world. So whenever I travel for an extended period of time, I'll always look up where there's a salsa night, and it will always bring me right back to, and as you said, it's a language. It's something beyond words. Once I was in India and I went to a salsa night, and I loved that I felt like I was home because I was dancing, and it didn't matter who I was dancing with, where they were from. In the end, we're dancing to the language of salsa, and that's all that matters. And it makes the world feel a little bit smaller and happier, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, it's beautiful that dance is a language in itself, if you think about it, and that you can just travel anywhere in the world and you find maybe a salsa party, but maybe also like a local dance, right? I feel like every culture has a different type of dancing, and it's so interesting how you can explore that and find connection through that. Is there any country now that you feel like, oh, I haven't been there yet and I would love to learn that dance?
Also, specifically for dancing, I mean, I definitely prefer Latin dance. That's really my thing. But I do feel that I would love one day to go to Vienna and dance in a ball. Like, I think it's more for my inner child to feel like a Disney princess and to waltz. And waltz is kind of the basis of a lot of dances. If anything, honestly, it's actually really nice to see that I think the dances I really wanted to learn, I already did. If anything, I would go back and improve in those dances. For instance, I really love samba no pie, which is the carnival samba, the passista samba. And there's a fantastic dancer and teacher called Alex Coutinho, and I've managed to train with him twice since leaving Rio. I never got to train with him in Rio. And I realized, wow, this pushes me to another level in terms of discipline, in terms of effort, in terms of feeling in my body and feeling empowered. And it's healing so much inside of me. I would love to go back to Rio and train with him, for instance. Or I'd love to go back to Buenos Aires and really, let's be honest. I went to 8 countries. I learned 18 dances. I'm not that advanced in any of them. I got a taste of all of them. I got to beginner, intermediate in a lot of them, but I would love to go back and improve. And tango is another one. I mean, Cuba, there's always time for Cuba. And one country that I went back to for an entire month was Colombia for salsa caleña, because it was just, for me, salsa caleña is just so incredibly joyful.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it's such an incredible journey. And maybe the first time you thought about it, it was like, this is a crazy idea. Is this really going to happen? Right? But just to follow that desire and make it happen. What would you tell if someone is listening and feels like, oh, I have this dream, but it feels so out of reach? I cannot do that. it's not, it's a great story, but it's not possible for me. What would you tell someone who is thinking like that at the moment?
So all it takes is the first step. I think all of us have a dream inside of us. The main reason, and it goes back to your very first question, people are afraid to get out. It's an effort, it's work. And interestingly, most people who do this kind of thing, who take the leap, have just gone through something very traumatic or very upsetting, because that actually gives you the fuel to take that step, because you'll do anything not to feel that suffering. Whereas if your life is fine, why would you change it? But I think for me, what made a big difference was, I'm just going to look it up out of curiosity. I'm just going to look up a flight. I'm just going to look up what the dance of X country is. And then what helped me a lot was to allow it to be hypothetical. You don't have to commit to do it right now. If you allow it to be a hypothetical idea and you start investigating it, it gradually starts to feel real. And then you start to have the confidence to take that first step. But once you take the first step, I pretty much guarantee that the first step is the hardest. It always is.
That's true. Yeah, it's really taking that first step and then the rest will follow. So yeah, would you say like you start very small and as you said, maybe just look at the flight? How do you then still get to actually booking the flight, right? Because I think sometimes what happens is that we stay in this brainstorm mode. So it's like, oh, let me do a little bit more research. Let's look this up. And before you know it, you're just looking at information for months and months, but you're actually not taking that step that really makes a change, because it feels like you have been taking steps by doing all of that, by gathering information, but actually you're not really making any changes yet.
Yeah, that's a good point. But I also do feel that when you're in the brainstorming mode, it's impossible not to want to then do it, especially if it is your dream. And maybe it's just booking only one small thing to create a sense of commitment to yourself.
Yeah. And sometimes we really have to find that courage to do that. Do you feel like after you had this experience of taking this big step, that afterwards in your life, it was easier to take similar decisions because you, in a way, build up that courage or that confidence to make this big leap and then travel all by yourself to different countries, as you said, connect with so many people and have all of these experiences? Looking back, do you feel like that really has changed how you approach things now in your daily life as well?
Absolutely. I think that it's like a muscle. The more that you overcome fears and that you go after what you want, the more easily that you can keep doing it. Let's use the example of, say you start working out at the gym and you can't do a push-up. And then you try and do one and it's just horrible. The next time you manage to do a full one. The next time you manage to do two. The next time you can do three. And then before you know it, you can do 12. Interestingly, learning to dance brings out the same in me, and I think in most people, of getting the steps wrong. And next time you do it a bit better and a bit better and a bit better. And both those examples are of, well, I can't do this. Going from I can't to I can, and the baby steps in between. And also how you can multiply those steps with every attempt. So I definitely feel that I'm not afraid to take a leap. I'm not afraid to take risks because of that experience. Because, I mean, things don't always work out how you expect, but I'm not afraid of that anymore. Because I found comfort in the discomfort, let's say.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. I feel like in my own journey as well, also moving to different countries, every time you, as you said, you grow that muscle, it becomes easier in a way. And even though it's a new step, a new chapter, you still already build that courage from previous experiences. So you can still use that. It's not, sometimes it can feel like you're starting from scratch, but actually you already have that experience from before.
Because the body remembers what it felt like to have done it the first time, and it knew that it learned that afterwards you were still safe, so you can do it again.
Yeah. You mentioned that you are working on your new book right now about dancing. Would you like to share anything about that, or are you still in the phase of like, oh, I cannot share
No, of
anything
course
yet?
I can. And I'm very
Yeah.
excited to share that the book proposal is out for submission right now. So the concept is totally designed. So the tentative title is The Power of Dance and how it helps you reach your full potential. I really think that as human beings, dance is a wonderful tool. There aren't many other activities that help us reach our full potential. And every chapter is a different aspect of life that dance can contribute to. So whether that's making us smarter, younger, happier, to kind of our basic needs, but also more authentically expressed, more creative, more bold, and how dance helps us find courage for the reasons that I just mentioned, that once you get out of your comfort zone and you start getting into these dance steps, then you're less afraid in other aspects of your life as well. And then also, I feel that dance really increases your intuition. It helps you tap into your wisdom and make decisions better based on who you are on the inside rather than the outside. Also health, physical, mental health as well. It was really interesting as I was doing research for the book. Dance has been around since forever. It has always been a major part of life. And it actually shocks me that we don't have it more, especially in Western society, because it's always been part of either, for instance, the Egyptians used dance for funerals. Even let's look at Bridgerton, the Regency period. Dance was absolutely key to courtship and to marriage. Dance has played a role since history ever started. So why aren't we giving it that much importance when you see the benefits that it has in terms of, you often see it when, it's a healthy hobby. When you dance, most people tend to drink less. People feel more connected. We're facing a huge loneliness epidemic. We're facing also an epidemic of so many health problems, heart problems, obesity, diabetes, but so many of them, dance has a very strong protective or preventative factor. So why aren't we doing this? And it also brings people together. If we think that we're meant to be in tribes, dance is a tribal thing in the end. So I'm really excited about this book because it really kind of just creates almost like a manifesto of why dance will save the world and why if more people dance, there would be less wars and less conflict and that we would just live a much more full life. Because I always think back of some moments where I was, for instance, in Cali in Colombia, they have this big festival every Christmas and they always play the same songs by Grupo Nietzsche. And you just see these two old men, they bring out their plastic chair outside their garage and their speaker and they just play salsa. And I just think, and then people just start dancing. And you think, what more could you possibly need? What more could you possibly need? In those moments, I have felt more joy than I ever felt in buying an expensive item. Or, in the end, everything you need is just speaker, some music, and your body. That's all.
Yeah, I love that. And when you were sharing that, like, there would be less wars, I was actually thinking, what if we could just have dance battles, and that's it, like fight it out on
that's the only type of battle we would have.
Yeah, exactly. Just to fight it out on the dance floor, like you see sometimes in those movies, those crews dancing against each other. I was like, oh, the world would be such a better place if that was the only, sort of quote unquote fight we would have. And just, yeah, connect through dancing. And I noticed that myself as well. One of the first things I did when I moved back to Sydney, I was like, I want to see where I can go dancing just to meet people, to have this feeling of community. And now I go to weekly Latin, usually salsa parties as well. And I just love to see that there are people from all ages, from so many different nationalities, and how we are all united through dancing. And it's so beautiful.
A humanizing experience, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I would love to ask you if you could share a little bit more in detail about your book, because we have talked about it a little bit already. And, you shared you have been to different countries, different dances, but just for the listener, for everyone who hasn't read the book yet, maybe you could share a little bit more about where did you go exactly, which dances did you learn, a little bit more about that journey?
Of course, yeah. So this is my book, Finding Rhythm, an international dance journey. And it's in the order of the journey itself. So there's a map at the beginning, just before the table of contents, that you should be able to see. And basically it was a journey from starting in New York and ending in Buenos Aires. And along the way, it took me through 8 different destinations to learn around 18 dances. And by 18, those are the ones that I actually trained in and took classes and then filmed. The challenge was to film a video of each one for a whole song. That was my personal challenge, because if I didn't set that objective, I would just take a few classes and not make the effort. I wouldn't have that pressure. Imagine it's like when you're preparing for a performance, you really have to deliver and you put in 250% instead of maybe 80%. So actually in New York, I started at the New York Salsa Congress, where I joined a special diva boot camp, which was a mix of cha-cha, pachanga, and boogaloo. And that I had to perform in front of 1,000 people. So I really started diving in the deep end. I had no idea that I was way too beginner to even do it, but I still did it. So in a way, I think that being naive helps you jump into things that you, as an intermediate, I would never have done that. But as a total naive beginner, I thought, oh, this looks fun. And then I also learned salsa on 2, which is the New York style of salsa. Then moving on to Mexico, I learned folkloric dances. So the national dance, which is the jarabe tapatío, and then other folkloric dances, including a guelaguetza, which is traditionally from Oaxaca. So I also ended up performing. I was the only foreigner with a Mexican troupe dancing together, and they were so kind and so nice, and I absolutely loved it. And then I went on to the Caribbean. So Cuba, of course, being kind of like the holy grail of Latin dances, because I feel like it's a starting point. So many dances evolved from Cuban rhythms. So there I learned Cuban salsa, son, which is the predecessor of Cuban salsa, and cubaton, which is like a Cuban reggaeton. Then in the Dominican Republic, I learned bachata and merengue. And in Puerto Rico, reggaeton and Puerto Rican salsa, which is kind of like an on-one LA style almost. And I kind of consider North Central and Caribbean being kind of the first half. And then the second half is South America, which was Colombia, Brazil, and Argentina. So in Colombia, I learned cumbia. I also danced poro, which is kind of like a couple. So cumbia is the national dance of Colombia. It has a very interesting history. And poro is almost like a couple's cumbia that they dance, especially in Medellin and some, I think, Barranquilla, which I have not been to. And then salsa caleña, which is my favorite style of salsa. I find it so joyful and so euphoric. And then in Brazil, I learned samba no pie, which is the Carnival samba. I danced in Carnival as well with a school called Beija-Flor. I learned forró, which is kind of like, I don't want to call it the Brazilian salsa because it doesn't look like salsa, but it would be the equivalent, I would say. It's a very beginner-friendly dance. Samba de gafieira, which is a couple samba, and the lambada. And then finally, in Argentina, I learned the tango and la chacarera, which is the national dance. And so finding rhythm really is my story, dancing my way through different countries and cultures, but also discovering different perspectives on life along the way. It's in the end, it's not just about me. Of course, there's my perspective as an outsider, because something that was really interesting is locals often said to me, you see our culture in a way that we take for granted. We take for granted how beautiful Latin culture is, how much it emphasizes human connection, how joyful it is. And thank you for reminding us of that. And I think it's almost like I'm just reflecting, something that as an outsider, you think, wow, this is so incredible, because in the end, it's about a way of living.
Yeah, I love that. And I know this is a hard question, maybe, or maybe not, but do you have a favorite after learning so many dances, traveling to so many countries? Is there one dance that you feel like, oh, this was absolutely my favorite?
It's really tough because I feel like I'm a different person in every dance, and every single dance style brings out a different facet of my personality, a different strength as well. I mean, I always, at the end of the book, I actually conclude with the fact that I have, tango is my favorite introverted dance, and salsa caleña is my favorite extroverted dance. And if I want something in between, it will be forró. Then I end up dancing whatever in whatever, here living in Lisbon, I'm dancing a lot of Cuban salsa, but I was recently at the Lisbon Tango Festival and realized just, I feel that tango is so incredibly deep. It's almost, it's a transcendence. I think we could say like it's transcendental. Because I feel like I float off to another state of being. It's very, very powerful, also very difficult. But I feel very deeply and profoundly, but then it's more of a contemplative dance where you're really, if you want to listen to your intuition, this is absolutely the dance that I like the most. But when I want to just feel alive and joyful, then obviously it would be salsa caleña, but also Cuban salsa, I think is it has a softness to it that makes it just easy and floating. Someone the other day who dances salsa caleña told me that Cuban salsa is like salsa reggae, which I thought was the interpretation of it. When you're dancing timba, which is a faster style, it's actually quite fast and dynamic. And then, of course, when I want to feel empowered, when I want to feel like I'm giving it everything and that I'm an absolute queen, it's samba no pie. For sure. So I think there are phases every year. I might have a favorite, but I would say now it's those three that are my favorites.
I was also reflecting on it myself when I asked you that question. I was like, which one do I like the most? I mean, I haven't tried tango yet. It's definitely still on my list. It just looks so beautiful, but I know it's quite challenging as well, right? So it's definitely something I would love to learn someday. But I think I also have that a little bit with salsa and bachata, I would say, or maybe even kizomba. It depends on your mood. Like for me, salsa is really when I want to feel energized and happy, and it's like, full party mode. And then bachata and kizomba are a bit more relaxed for me if I want to just chill and dance at the same time, So yeah, I guess it also sometimes depends on your mood and which music you feel like listening to at that moment. And that's the beauty, that there's so many options. There's so much to choose from.
Yeah, and it's like a kaleidoscope of human emotions as well. Living a happy life does not mean being happy all the time. It also means being resilient in difficult times and feeling sadness. I don't know if you know this feelings wheel with all these different feelings. Well, dances are the same. If you want to feel euphoric, maybe you go for a salsa caleña. If you want to feel romantic, maybe you go for a bachata. If you're feeling really sad or dealing with heartbreak, go for a tango. And then you can be melancholic and enjoy your pain. Even at least I found tango to be very, very healing in difficult times. If I want to feel empowered and confident, I go for samba no pie. So it's almost like a beautiful menu of options of expression, I would say.
Yeah, I love that. Is there anything else, any other way that someone can connect with you beyond the book?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have my website, bailandojourney.com. Bailando means dancing in Spanish, and I believe that dancing is a journey. So bailandojourney.com, and my email is info@bailandojourney.com. You can find my book, Finding Rhythm, An International Dance Journey, anywhere you get your books. You can order it from any independent bookstore to support them. You can also find it online, and on Instagram you can connect with me at Bailando Journey.
Yeah, and I will put all the links in the show notes. And also, if you have any insights or anything that stood out from our conversation, feel free to reach out to me or to Alienor. Maybe you feel like, oh, I want to learn a new dance right now. I'm going to sign up for a dance class. That would be great. Yeah,
please go and sign up for a dance class. Best decision you'll ever make.
Yeah, and send us a photo. So thank you so much, Alienor, for this beautiful conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you. And for the listeners, thank you so much for listening. Make sure to follow and subscribe to Beyond the podcast so you stay up to date on future episodes. And I will see you in the next one.